A lonely woman lived forgotten by the world, until one night a cry outside her door changed everything. On her doorstep lay an abandoned child, so fragile, so silent, as if life itself was slipping away. She could have turned away, but instead she made a choice that would bind her to a fate she never saw coming. For years she poured every drop of love into raising the boy, believing she had saved him. But the past never stays buried. And when the child's real father returned, he didn't just come for his son. He came with a truth that would shatter everything. For years she had lived on the edge of a small, forgotten village. Her days passed in silence. Her only company the whispers of the wind through the tall grass and the crackling of the fire she lit each evening. Neighbors rarely visited. Family had long since drifted away. Her heart carried scars of a life filled with disappointments, dreams of marriage that never came true, children she could never have, and the constant ache of being unseen. Loneliness had become the rhythm of her existence, so familiar she no longer questioned it. But life has a way of breaking patterns when we least expect it. That night, when the faint cry of a child pierced through the darkness, she thought at first it was a cruel trick of her imagination. Yet, when she opened her door, there he was, wrapped in a worn cloth, tiny fists trembling against the cold. His breathing was shallow, his face pale as though he had been left too long. In that instant, her heart wrenched in a way she had never known. Every part of her knew this was dangerous. She didn't know who had left him or why. Taking him in could invite questions she was not ready to answer, but turning her back felt impossible. Against reason, against fear, she lifted the child into her arms. That single decision turned her silent life into something entirely different. No longer was she just a woman lost to time. She had become a mother, and though the village whispered and judged, she clung to the child with everything she had, never realizing the storm her act of kindness had set in motion. Raising a child was never something she had imagined for herself. Yet from the moment she held the baby against her chest, she felt a fierce responsibility that went beyond blood. She named him Quito, meaning precious gift, because to her, that's exactly what he was. The first years were not easy. She had little money, surviving only on the food she could grow, and the odd tasks she did for others in the village. Every extra grain of rice, every blanket she stitched by hand, every coin she earned went first to Quito. She often went hungry so he wouldn't, and while she worked until her hands bled, she never complained, because every smile, every giggle, every tiny hand clutching hers reminded her that she was no longer alone. But the village people did not see it that way. Whispers followed her wherever she went. She must have stolen him. No man wanted her, so she took another woman's child. Some even spat at her feet, calling her cursed. In a place where heritage and family bloodlines meant everything, raising a child who clearly wasn't hers made her an outcast. Yet she endured every insult in silence, shielding Quito from the cruelty with her quiet strength. As Quito grew older, his questions began. Why don't I look like you? Where did I come from? She would hold him close and tell him he was chosen, that he was wanted, that love made a family stronger than blood. But inside, she feared the day he would learn the truth that he was left behind, discarded, forgotten. She wanted to protect him from that pain for as long as possible. By the time Quito was 10, he had grown into a boy full of life and curiosity. He ran through the fields with a brightness that defied the shadows of his past. Yet not everyone saw his joy the way she did. The older boys taunted him, telling him he didn't belong, that he had no father, no real place in the world. More than once he came home with bruises, not just on his body, but on his heart. Each time she held him until his sobs faded, whispering that he was loved, that he was hers, that he mattered. Still, even love has its limits when the weight of the world pushes too hard. She could see it in his eyes sometimes, an emptiness, a longing to know who he truly was. And though she feared it, she knew one day the past would come knocking. She was right, because far beyond the village, a man who had abandoned his child was beginning to remember what he had lost. A man with regrets, but also with secrets. And as Quito's laughter filled the small home, the woman never saw the storm quietly making its way toward them. The storm carried by the boy's real father and the unexpected truth he would bring with him. The day began like any other. The woman rose early, sweeping the floor of her small home while Quito chased a chicken outside, his laughter echoing through the yard. The sky was clear, the air warm. Nothing about that morning suggested her world was about to change forever. She first noticed the shadow of a man approaching from the road. His steps were slow, heavy, as though burdened by years of silence. She froze. Something inside her, the part of her that had lived in fear of this moment, knew who he was before he even spoke. The man's face was lined with age, his clothes worn, but his eyes carried a piercing familiarity. Quito noticed too. The boy tilted his head, confused by the stranger who stared at him with a strange intensity. The father had returned, but he did not come with open arms or simple apologies. In his hand he carried a folded letter, and in his voice trembled both guilt and desperation. He explained that years ago, when he abandoned his child, it was not only poverty that drove him, it was fear. Fear of persecution, fear of secrets tied to the child's birth. The boy was not simply abandoned. He was hidden from men who wanted him gone. Now those same men had returned, demanding answers. And the father, weighed down by regret, had nowhere else to turn. He wanted his son back, not only out of love, but to protect him from a danger the boy had never known. The woman's heart pounded. For years she had sacrificed everything to give this child a safe home, only to learn that safety had been an illusion all along. Quito stood between them, torn by the sudden revelation that the man before him was his blood, while the woman who had raised him trembled at the thought of losing the only family she ever had. The past had arrived at her doorstep, carrying a truth more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The woman's knees felt weak as she listened, her world unraveling with each word the man spoke. For years, she had built her life around the boy, believing love could shield him from anything. Now she understood. Love alone could not erase the shadows of the past. The danger was real, and the father's sudden return was proof of how fragile their peace had always been. Quito looked from one face to the other, his young heart torn in ways he could not yet name. Blood stood before him in the form of a weary man who spoke of threats and regret. But home stood beside him in the form of the woman who had wiped his tears, carried his weight, and sacrificed everything to give him a chance to live. The father pleaded for forgiveness, begging for the chance to make right what he had abandoned. Yet the woman could see in his eyes the fear, the desperation, not just of a man wanting his son back, but of someone haunted by mistakes that could never be undone. She realized then that while blood ties were undeniable, it was love that shaped the soul. In the end, she made a choice. She opened her door, not to let the man take the boy away, but to let him stay, to be part of the child's life if he truly wished. Not as a conqueror reclaiming what he had lost, but as a broken man, learning how to give again. The path forward would not be simple. Danger might still come and scars of abandonment would linger. But in that fragile moment, something powerful took root. Forgiveness. Not for the man's sake alone, but for the boy, who deserved to know that family can grow even out of broken beginnings. And so the story closes not with loss, but with a question that lingers. Is family only the blood we're born into? Or is it the love we fight to keep, even when the world tries to tear it away?